Chapter 1. Get tired of your own excuses and move. You know, there comes a time in your life when you just get tired of your own excuses. You don't need anyone to yell at you. You don't need another motivational quote. What you really need is a moment of truth with yourself. A moment where you stop playing games with your own potential. A moment where you sit down and finally say, I've had enough. Because here's the truth. Nothing changes until you get tired. Tired of being behind. Tired of breaking promises to yourself. Tired of waking up every morning knowing you could do more. Tired of seeing your potential sit there while your time runs out. And at some point you realize it's not about what's going on outside. It's about the decisions you're making on the inside. It's not the weather. It's not your job. It's not other people. It's you. You're the reason things haven't moved forward, and you're the only one who can change that. Excuses are easy. You don't need training to come up with an excuse. You don't need discipline to make yourself feel better about not doing something. But that excuse doesn't stop time. It doesn't stop consequences. It doesn't pause life until you're ready. All it does is rob you quietly and slowly while you try to explain to yourself why you haven't taken action. Most people don't fail because they can't do it. They fail because they keep saying, not today. They keep hoping that motivation will hit them in the face and magically fix their life. But here's what you learn as you grow. Motivation is not coming. Motivation is not reliable. It's not the spark you wait for. It's the reward you earn after taking action you didn't feel like taking. You move first. You decide first. You take the first step while your emotions are still dragging behind. And you won't feel ready. You won't feel like it. But that's the test. The test isn't how good you are when you feel amazing. The test is what you do when everything in you wants to delay, wants to hide, wants to scroll, wants to talk instead of move. That's the real moment of strength. That's where confidence is built. That's where discipline starts to take root. Some people spend 5 years planning and 0 days acting. They write lists. They talk about their goals. They think deeply. But they never force themselves to act when it's uncomfortable. And if you keep doing that, life will slip right past you. 1 year, then another, and another, until the frustration becomes unbearable, until your own excuses no longer sound convincing, not even to yourself. That's the day when the change begins, when you hear yourself say the same thing 1 too many times, and you finally go quiet and move. If you want to get ahead, if you want real change, stop trying to feel better first. Start by taking one action, one phone call, one workout, one uncomfortable conversation, one item off your list, 1 hour of focused work. That's how it starts. That's how you take the power back. That's how you stop being stuck. The mind will give you every reason to stop. It will say you're tired. It will say you're not good enough. It will say it's too late. And the longer you listen to that voice, the more it becomes your truth. But here's the key. You can override that voice. You can cut it off. You can say, no, I'm doing this anyway. And when you do that, something shifts. Your brain starts to follow your body. Your mood starts to catch up to your action, and you stop being a slave to feelings. Because feelings are temporary. Regret lasts longer. And you don't want to live a life where you look back and realize you let your future slip away because you kept giving in to a lazy moment. Nobody's coming to push you. Nobody's going to force you. You have to force yourself. That's the truth. And I'll tell you something else. There's power in doing things before you feel like it. There's power in showing yourself that you don't need to be motivated, you just need to decide. Once you learn that, your life will change forever. You'll stop waiting, you'll stop searching, you'll stop depending on perfect conditions, and you'll get things done. Because you said so. You don't rise by doing easy things. You rise by pushing yourself when it would be easier to do nothing. And every time you choose action over avoidance, you build something stronger inside of you. You build trust. You build grit. You build a mindset that doesn't depend on comfort to be productive. This is how winners live. They don't wait until the mood strikes. They show up when it's cold, when it's uncomfortable, when they're tired, when their friends are out, when no one's clapping, when no one's watching, because they made a decision and they stick to it. Ask yourself, how many opportunities have I missed because I waited too long? How many times have I let fear decide for me? How many promises have I made to myself and then broken? That's the pain that builds over time. That's the weight you carry when you keep choosing comfort over growth. But you can change that today, not next week, not when things settle down, not when it feels right, today. All it takes is one decision. I will not let this day pass without doing something that matters. I will not end this day without progress. And no matter how small it is, I will move forward. The first step is never easy. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable, it's filled with doubt. But it's also the most powerful moment you'll ever experience, because once you take it, everything else starts to shift. Your mind starts to quiet down, your doubts start to shrink, and your identity begins to change. From someone who waits to someone who moves. That's the mindset you want. That's the strength you need. To be the kind of person who doesn't need perfect energy or a perfect plan. You just need one reason to begin. And that reason is this. You're tired of your own excuses. You know what it feels like to let yourself down. You've been through enough of that. So now, it's time to build something better, something solid, something real. And that starts with action. Right now. Not big action. Just one move that proves to yourself that you're serious. You want more discipline? Do the thing you've been avoiding. You want more confidence? Keep showing up until you earn it. You want to stop being stuck? Stop overthinking and take the next step that's right in front of you. No hacks, no tricks, just decisions. You don't get your life back by wishing. You get it back by doing. You change your story by refusing to play the same part every day. And every time you force yourself to take action when you don't feel like it, you become a stronger version of yourself. That's the goal. That's the mission. No one can give you that kind of strength. You have to earn it, and the way you earn it is by showing up again and again, not because you feel like it, but because you said you would. That's where the breakthrough lives. So stop waiting. Stop planning the perfect moment. Stop needing permission. Just act. Start small. Start tired. Start unsure. But start. Because once you start, you're no longer stuck. And when you keep moving, you start to believe. You start to change. You start to become exactly who you said you would be. And that's when life begins to shift. Not because something outside changed, but because you did. You got tired of your excuses, and you finally moved. That's what turns everything around. Chapter 2. Do it now, before your mind talks you out. You've got about 5 seconds. That's how long you have before your mind starts working against you. You get the thought to do something, to get up, to speak up, to start working to break the pattern. And if you don't move on it immediately, your brain will find a way to pull you back. That hesitation, that delay, that tiny moment where you pause to think, it's the crack your old habits use to slip back in and take over. And that's the problem for most people. They don't understand how fast the mind can talk them out of action. You think you're being careful, but what's really happening is you're being controlled by fear, by doubt, by comfort, and by the same patterns that have kept you stuck. Action doesn't belong to the thinker, it belongs to the doer. And the only way to win that internal battle is to move before your mind can stop you. You already know what needs to be done. You're not confused, you're not lost, you're just caught in a loop of hesitation. You keep waiting for the moment when you'll feel ready, feel inspired, or feel confident. But that moment never comes first. It only comes after you move. You don't wait for confidence, you build it. You don't wait for clarity, you create it. And the only way to do that is to start doing what you know you need to do before your mind convinces you not to. Your brain is always going to prioritize safety. It wants to protect you from discomfort. So the moment you get a hard idea, something outside your routine, something that requires effort, it will immediately try to bring you back to what's familiar. It'll give you thoughts like, do it later, or maybe this isn't the right time, or what if it doesn't work out? But here's what you need to realize. Those thoughts are automatic. They're not wisdom, they're not reason, they're resistance. And if you keep listening to them, you will never move forward. You'll just live on repeat, stuck in the same cycle of wanting change but never doing enough to create it. There's a real cost to waiting. It's not neutral. Every time you delay, you lose momentum. Every time you overthink, you make the problem bigger in your mind. And eventually the energy you had to take action is gone. Not because you couldn't do it, but because you allowed the window to close. That's what people don't realize. Action has a short window. If you don't take it when it shows up, it fades. And the more you do that, the more you train yourself to retreat. You've got to move fast when you feel it. You've got to act before your old self shows up and starts questioning everything. That's how you build discipline. Not by making big speeches to yourself, but by catching the moment and acting before the excuses come in. Get up before you argue with the alarm. Make the call before you second-guess it. Say yes before fear has a chance to negotiate with you. That's how change happens, by doing the thing, not talking about it. You'll never feel like doing hard things. That's the reality. You're not going to wake up one day and magically feel excited about challenges. That's why you need to make action your habit, not a reaction to motivation. The people who get ahead aren't better than you, they're not smarter or luckier, they've just trained themselves to act quickly. They don't give their mind time to pull them back. They feel the resistance and they move anyway. That's the secret. You have to treat hesitation like a red flag. The moment you notice yourself stalling, you push yourself into motion. Don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait until you feel emotionally prepared. That's how people lose years of their life. They keep preparing, planning, researching, and waiting. But nothing beats action. You learn more from 5 minutes of doing than 5 hours of thinking. And every time you act quickly, you get stronger. You build a new pattern, you start trusting yourself again. Most people don't trust themselves because they've broken too many of their own promises. They say they're going to start, but they don't. They say they're going to change, but they delay. And every time they do that, their self-respect takes a hit. But you can turn that around. The moment you start acting on your first impulse, not the second, not the third, you begin to rebuild your self-trust. And that's what gives you confidence. Not compliments, not books, not videos, action. Everything you want is on the other side of that hesitation. Every goal, every result, every breakthrough, it's all sitting behind that first uncomfortable move. The only thing that separates you from it is the choice to act now, not tomorrow, not after you think about it, now. Because once you start acting fast, everything changes. You stop wasting energy. You stop spiraling in your thoughts. You stop giving fear the microphone, and you take control again. This is the difference between the people who make it and the people who don't. The people who move when it's hard, when it's inconvenient, when it's scary, they're the ones who change. The ones who wait until it feels right, they stay stuck. And the truth is, it'll never feel right. That's why you have to train yourself to move before your emotions talk you out of it. You've got to become someone who does. You know what you need to do. That's not the problem. You've known for a long time. The only thing stopping you is the habit of hesitation, and you break that habit by catching it in the act. The moment you feel it creeping in, that second when you start to think, maybe I'll do it later, interrupt it. Stand up, move, do one thing that gets you closer. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be done now. Action creates clarity. Action creates confidence. Action creates results. Nothing else does. And once you understand that, you stop arguing with yourself. You stop justifying delays. You stop trying to feel better before doing better. And you take back your time, your focus, your power. The world isn't waiting for you. The opportunity doesn't pause while you hesitate. Time doesn't slow down to give you more chance. Life rewards action. That's the rule. And if you want to start winning, you've got to obey that rule. That means moving quickly, showing up when it's hard, and not giving your brain space to sabotage you. You'll never feel ready. So what? Do it anyway. You'll feel fear. That's normal. Do it anyway. You'll doubt yourself. That's part of the process. Do it anyway. Because every time you act when it's uncomfortable, you build strength that lasts. That strength shows up when you need it. That strength is what carries you through setbacks. And that strength is built by doing things before your mind talks you out. This is not about perfection. It's about motion. It's about making progress before your emotions kill your momentum. And if you can do that, if you can keep moving forward, even when it's messy, you'll outgrow your excuses. You'll outwork your doubt. And you'll become someone who gets things done, no matter what. It all starts with a decision. I will act now. I will not delay. I will not overthink. I will not wait for the perfect moment. I will move before my mind stops me, and I will keep moving until the habit of fast action becomes who I am, because that's where the power lives. Not in thinking, not in planning, in doing. Now, Chapter 3. Break the cycle of overthinking by doing something small. Overthinking will wear you down before you've even begun. It's one of the quietest ways people ruin their progress. They don't mean to stop. They don't say, I quit. What they do is sit there, thinking, analyzing, questioning, worrying, and eventually doing nothing. And the problem is, it feels like you're doing something. It feels like planning. It feels like preparing. But it's not. It's just delay dressed up like strategy. The truth is, you're not stuck because you don't know enough. You're stuck because you won't take the first step. Most people don't realize how dangerous that mental spiral can be. You start with a small decision, something simple, and then your brain turns it into a complicated mess. You tell yourself you're just being cautious. But what's really happening is you're trying to predict every possible outcome so you never feel discomfort. You want a guarantee. You want a result before taking the risk. But life doesn't work that way. You don't get the reward first, you move first. And you figure it out after you've started, not before. The fastest way to destroy that cycle is to do something small. Something so small your brain can't make it a threat. You're not trying to win the game in one move. You're just getting yourself in motion. And once you do that, everything shifts. Because movement changes your mental state. It gives your brain something new to focus on. And that focus breaks the loop of overthinking. You can't spiral in doubt and take action at the same time. Your mind can only go in one direction at once. So the second you move, even just a little, you interrupt the loop. Think about all the times you've sat on something for days. You kept saying, I need to figure it out, and then one day you finally did something, anything, and it wasn't even that hard. What changed? Not the problem. You changed. You finally got out of your head and into your life. And it happened because you took a step. Not a perfect one, just a step. That's all it takes. Not a grand plan, not a massive overhaul, just one decision that leads to motion. Overthinking feels safe. That's why people stay there. You don't have to face rejection when you're still planning. You don't have to feel failure when it's all in your mind. But the longer you stay there, the worse it gets. You start questioning everything. Your confidence fades. Your ideas feel overwhelming. You convince yourself it's too late or too complicated, and soon you've buried the very thing you said mattered to you. Not because you failed, but because you waited. The way out is action, even if it's small, especially if it's small. Big changes scare the brain, but small ones? They slip past the resistance. You want to start writing? Open a document and type one sentence. You want to fix your health? Go for a 10-minute walk. You want to get out of debt? Cancel one unnecessary subscription today. That's how you get back in control. By taking back the moment. By reminding yourself that you don't have to solve everything right now. You just have to do something. Success isn't about never overthinking. It's about catching yourself early and choosing a better response. It's about building the habit of doing instead of delaying. The strongest people you know still feel uncertainty, but they act anyway. They've trained themselves to ignore the noise and take steps, even when things aren't fully clear. That's what separates people who grow from people who stay stuck. You don't need to be fearless, you just need to be willing. Willing to act when your brain wants to freeze, willing to take a small risk, willing to break the loop of waiting. And once you do that once, you build trust in yourself. You prove that you can take control instead of letting your thoughts run you. And that trust compounds. It turns into confidence, not the fake kind that talks big but does nothing, the real kind that's earned through repeated follow through. If you're overwhelmed, it means your mind is trying to do everything at once. That's a sign, not that you should quit, but that you need to break it down. You need to shrink the problem until it's something you can act on today, not next week, not when life calms down, today. That's how you take the power back. Overthinking wants you to believe you have to solve everything before you start. But action proves you don't. Action says, I'll figure it out on the way. You have to stop expecting clarity before commitment. That's not how progress works. You don't get a map until you start walking. You take the step and then the next path shows up. But if you keep waiting for everything to make sense before you move, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life. That's how dreams die. Not in chaos, but in comfort, in hesitation, in the quiet voice that says, think about it more. Every single time, you're about to grow. The world rewards people who move, not people who think about moving. The difference between where you are and where you want to be is action. And not even massive action, just consistent, daily movement. You don't climb the mountain in one day. You take one step up, and you keep doing it. Overthinking makes the mountain look bigger than it is. Action makes it real, and once it's real, you can deal with it. You already know what your next move is. It's the one you keep putting off, the call you haven't made, the message you didn't send, the task you keep reshuffling on your list. That one thing, it's small, but it matters. That's your starting point. That's where the chain breaks. You don't need a miracle, you need motion. And the moment you stop thinking about it and do it, the weight lifts, the fog clears, the energy returns. Because you're no longer stuck in the loop, you're living again. Most people underestimate how quickly their life could change if they simply stopped hesitating. If they just gave themselves permission to do the small thing, not the big leap, just the first step. That's the secret. You build the future one small win at a time, and those wins only happen when you take them out of your head and into the real world. So the next time you feel yourself spiraling, pause. Don't go deeper. Don't try to figure out the whole picture. Just zoom in. Ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do right now that moves this forward? Then do it. Immediately. No discussion, no waiting, no checking your mood. Just do it. And when that's done, find the next one. Stack those moments. That's how you build a life that moves forward instead of going in circles. You don't need more time. You don't need more thinking. You need a start. And the start doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to happen. Because once you move, everything else becomes easier. Your brain catches up, your confidence grows, and the person who used to sit and overthink everything becomes the person who gets things done. Not all at once, but one small action at a time. That's how you break the cycle. That's how you win. Chapter 4. Act before you feel ready or motivated to start. Waiting to feel ready is one of the biggest traps people fall into. You tell yourself that once you're in the right mood, once you have more confidence, once the timing feels better, then you'll start. But that moment rarely comes, and even when it does, it doesn't last long. Motivation isn't dependable, it's a feeling, and feelings are unpredictable. If your actions depend on your emotional state, you'll always be inconsistent. You'll start strong one day and disappear the next, and that's not how growth happens. The truth is, if you want to achieve anything real, you have to act before you feel ready. You have to move before motivation shows up. Action must come first, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The people who make things happen in this world aren't the ones who feel great every morning. They're the ones who decided that how they feel won't decide what they do. That decision changes everything. Because when you learn to move without needing to feel a certain way, you become dangerous in the best way. You become consistent, you become reliable, you become someone who takes control of their life, no matter what their mood looks like. Most people misunderstand motivation. They think it's something that arrives before effort, but it's the other way around. Motivation follows movement. You get a little spark after you've already done something difficult. You feel stronger after you take action, not before. If you wait to feel like it, you'll stay stuck. You'll keep putting it off. You'll keep finding new distractions to fill your time. And every day that passes becomes another reminder that you didn't show up for yourself again. That creates guilt, and guilt is heavy. It slows you down, not just emotionally, but mentally. You start believing you're not capable. You start wondering if something's wrong with you. But there's nothing wrong with you. You're just relying on the wrong thing to get started. You're depending on inspiration instead of discipline. And that mindset will keep you in the same place, year after year. You'll talk a lot, you'll dream a lot, but you won't move. There's something powerful that happens when you do the thing you don't feel ready for. You teach yourself that fear and hesitation don't get the final say. You remind yourself that action is always an option, no matter how unprepared you think you are. And more often than not, once you begin, the fear shrinks. It loses its grip, because most of what you're afraid of lives in the space before you start. Once you're in it, you deal with what's real, not what your mind imagined. Feeling ready is a lie we tell ourselves to delay discomfort. It's a false standard. You don't need to be in a perfect state to make progress. You need to be present. You need to be willing. You need to take one step, even while your nerves are still active and your doubts are loud. That's courage. Courage isn't confidence. Courage is showing up before confidence arrives. Confidence is built afterward, after you prove to yourself that you can handle what you thought you couldn't. Every single person who's built something worthwhile has done it in a state of uncertainty. Nobody starts with full assurance. They start with a little bit of belief and a lot of willingness to act. And they keep showing up through fear, through doubt, through confusion, because they know that sitting around waiting to feel better isn't a real plan. It's a delay tactic. Your emotions aren't built for progress. They're built for protection. So of course you feel nervous. Of course you feel unsure. That's the brain's way of keeping you away from risk. But growth is a risk. Success is a risk. Change is a risk. You can't protect yourself and grow at the same time. One will always cost the other. So if you want to break through, you need to stop checking how you feel before deciding what to do. You need to act as if it's already time. Because it is. The time is now. It's not next week. It's not after you feel more ready. It's not after someone gives you permission. It's now. And every second you delay it, you build a habit of hesitation. A habit that gets stronger with every excuse you accept. You don't need to be the best to begin. You just need to begin. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to be willing to figure it out as you go. And you don't need the perfect moment. You need this moment, right now, because this moment is the only one you actually have. Think about how many times you've delayed something important. How many times you've said, I'll start tomorrow, and then tomorrow turned into another excuse. That pattern doesn't change on its own. It changes when you interrupt it. When you say, I'm tired of waiting on a feeling to give me permission to live. That's when the shift happens. That's when things begin to move. You take the first action with nerves still in your stomach, with doubt still in your mind, with fear still in the background. But you do it anyway. And by doing it anyway, you weaken the grip of those emotions. They don't disappear completely. But they don't control you anymore. That's progress. That's power. And the more you act without waiting for motivation, the more you build that strength inside you. You start to realize you're capable of much more than you thought. You start trusting yourself again. You stop needing to feel perfect in order to show up. You just show up. And when you make that a habit, everything in your life changes. Not overnight, but steadily, day by day, action by action. You move from someone who waits for life to get easier into someone who builds their future on discipline. So don't wait until you feel confident. Don't wait until you feel motivated. Don't wait until your fear is gone. Don't wait until everything makes sense. Don't wait until you've read one more book or heard one more speech. Start, even if it's rough, even if it's awkward, even if you're unsure. Start, because starting changes everything. It breaks the mental resistance. It turns fear into clarity. It turns doubt into action. And it reminds you that you're in control, not your emotions. You're not weak because you don't feel ready. You're human. Everyone feels that way, but the ones who grow, the ones who succeed, the ones who make things happen, they do it anyway. They understand that waiting is just another form of fear, and they've learned to face that fear by doing what needs to be done anyway. So if you're staring at something right now that you know you need to do, don't check your mood. Don't analyze how you feel about it. Just take the first step. One move, one motion, one start. That's all it takes to shift the direction of your life. Not a perfect plan, not a surge of energy, just action. Right now, before your mind convinces you to put it off again. Because if you can act without waiting to feel ready, you'll never be stuck. You'll never be at the mercy of motivation. You'll be free because you chose to move forward when everything in you said to wait. And that's how real progress is made. That's how confidence is earned. That's how you become unstoppable.
Chapter 5. Build pressure by setting a deadline and sticking to it. Nothing moves until you give it a real deadline. You can talk about your goals all day long. You can write them in a notebook, put them on your wall, or tell your friends. But if there's no deadline, it's just a wish. A deadline makes it real. A deadline puts time on the table. It makes your brain stop treating the task like something you'll do someday and start treating it like something that must be done now. Without that pressure, there's no urgency. And without urgency, there's no focus. Without focus, there's no progress. That's why most people stay stuck, not because they don't know what to do, but because they haven't set a real finish line. People say pressure is bad, but the truth is, pressure is what wakes you up. It's what activates your mind. When the deadline is real and close, suddenly your excuses get quiet. Your distractions lose their appeal. You stop overthinking and start doing. That's the power of pressure. It pulls your attention into the present. And the moment your focus sharpens, your ability to execute rises. You get more done in 1 hour under pressure than in 10 hours without it. But here's what makes the difference. You have to create that pressure on purpose. You have to say, this is the date, this is the time, this is when it will be done. No flexibility, no backup plan, no stretching it out when it feels uncomfortable. When you make the deadline real, and when you treat it as non-negotiable, something shifts in your behavior. You stop operating based on feelings, and you start moving based on commitment. Too many people live with open loops. They've got projects they haven't finished, decisions they haven't made, goals they keep pushing, and because nothing is urgent, nothing gets done. The brain isn't wired to chase things that don't have a timeline. It needs edges. It needs pressure. It needs to know when the race ends, or it won't run. So when you remove the deadline, you remove the drive. That's why the most disciplined people you meet always work with dates, timelines, and targets. They understand that accountability starts with clarity. You have to give your goal a real date, or it stays a fantasy. And once the deadline is set, you must stick to it, not just when things go smoothly, especially when things don't. That's what builds mental toughness. That's what teaches your brain to perform under stress. When you show up under pressure and deliver anyway, you earn trust in yourself. You prove that you don't break under responsibility. And that builds something far more valuable than temporary motivation. It builds self-respect. You want to feel proud of yourself. Start keeping the promises you make to yourself. Set a deadline and don't move it. Finish the task even when it's inconvenient. Push through the mental friction and get it done on time. That kind of follow-through changes the way you see yourself. You no longer need validation from others because you've proven to yourself that you're reliable. And that's what separates achievers from wishers. One group waits for things to feel right. The other makes a commitment and follows through whether it feels right or not. You can't grow without structure. It's a boundary that says, this ends here. That gives your effort shape. It gives your time meaning. You stop floating through the day. You stop wasting energy on the wrong things. You know what needs to happen and when. And when that kind of clarity exists, your performance naturally rises, not because you try harder, but because your attention has been narrowed. Every time you break your own deadline, you weaken your inner standard. You start believing it's okay to fall short. That mindset becomes dangerous, because now you've taught yourself that it's acceptable to plan and not execute. And if you do that long enough, you lose the ability to trust your own word. You say you'll start, but you don't. You say you'll finish, but you quit. And over time your goals feel fake, even to you. But you can turn it around today. You can set a date right now for the one thing you've been avoiding. Not next month, not when things calm down. Right now, pick the day, pick the time, put it in writing, then plan your steps backward. Break it into chunks, and every day, move toward that date like it's locked in. Don't negotiate with yourself. Don't give yourself an escape route. Lock it in and go. And when the day comes, finish it, no matter what. Whether you're ready or not, whether it's perfect or not, whether you feel like it or not, done is better than delayed. Done is how you build momentum. Done is what turns chaos into confidence. This works for everything. Small habits, big goals, life changes. If you're serious, you'll give it a date. And if you're truly committed, you'll keep that date. Because once you treat your goals like real responsibilities, your behavior begins to match your ambition. You stop drifting. You stop procrastinating. You stop wondering why things aren't moving. Because now you've taken control of the one thing that matters, your time. Pressure isn't your enemy, it's your edge. It's the tool that turns your potential into real progress. It's the push that makes you sit down and focus when everything else is screaming for your attention. It's the force that reminds you this isn't a game. This is your life. This is your time. And it's slipping away if you don't move. Start with one goal. Give it a date. Set a deadline that feels a little uncomfortable, one that forces you to pay attention, and then hold that line. Protect that commitment. Make it more important than your distractions. And once you hit it, do it again. Pick another target, shorten the time, increase the pressure, and keep going. Every deadline you meet builds more than results. It builds identity. You go from someone who talks about doing things to someone who gets them done. You move from frustration to confidence, from chaos to control, from fear to freedom. There's no secret to it, just a real decision and a real deadline. That's how things start to change. Not because you feel better, not because life suddenly cooperates, but because you've decided that your goals are worth finishing, and you're the one who's going to make it happen. Chapter 6. Say what you'll do, and do it without delay. One of the most powerful things you can do for yourself is this. Say what you'll do, and then do it without delay. Not when it's easy, not when the mood is perfect, not after you think it through again. Say it, mean it, do it. That simple habit can rebuild your entire life. Because nothing destroys confidence faster than saying things you never follow through on. It doesn't just disappoint others, it damages how you see yourself. When your words stop meaning anything to you, your actions lose direction. That's why every promise matters, especially the small ones. If you say you'll do it, you owe it to yourself to move right now, not later. It's easy to get caught up in saying the right things. You say you're going to start waking up earlier. You say you're going to hit the gym. You say you'll start the business, save the money, learn the skill. And for a moment, it feels good to say it. It gives you a brief sense of control, as if speaking the intention somehow puts you on the path. But that feeling doesn't last, because nothing actually changes until you act. Nothing becomes real until there's movement behind the words. That's why the habit of immediate follow-through matters more than how perfect the plan sounds. When you delay action after saying what you'll do, you create a gap between your intention and your identity. You feel the weight of it. You feel it when you avoid the task. You feel it when someone asks how it's going, and you have to dodge the question. You feel it when you look in the mirror and know deep down you're not keeping your word. That weight adds up. It becomes frustration. It becomes guilt. And eventually it turns into self-doubt. But there's a way to reverse it. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You don't need to do 100 things. You just need to build one strong habit. Follow through fast. When you say you'll do something, anything, get up and do it right away. Even if it's small, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's not perfect, that habit alone can restore your self-respect. Because every time you do what you said you would, you prove to yourself that your word has value. This builds trust, not with others but with yourself. And self-trust is the foundation for everything. It's what gives you the confidence to take on bigger challenges. It's what allows you to keep moving when you're tired or uncertain, because deep down you know you finish what you start. That belief doesn't come from motivation, it comes from proof. From showing up over and over again, even when it's not convenient. You don't need external pressure when you've built internal integrity. You don't need someone checking on you. You don't need reminders, because you've already made it clear. Your word means something. You say it, you move. No room for hesitation, no negotiation, no delay, and that doesn't mean you'll always get it right. Sometimes you'll stumble, sometimes it won't go perfectly, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that you acted, you showed up, you made the move, and that alone puts you ahead of most people, because most people never act on what they say. They talk about goals, they talk about dreams, they talk about plans, but there's always a delay, always a reason to wait, always one more excuse. But every time you delay, you make it harder to believe in yourself. You make it easier to lie to yourself. You start to blur the line between what you intend and what you actually do. And over time, you stop believing your own voice. That's a dangerous place to be, because if you can't trust yourself, nothing else works. Not your routine, not your mindset, not your relationships. Everything starts with the habit of doing what you said without delay. This applies to everything. Your habits, your discipline, your work, your relationships. If you tell yourself, I'm going to clean up my health, then your actions need to begin the same day, not next Monday, not after one last comfort binge. Now, if you say I'm going to stop wasting time, then you need to catch yourself the next time you scroll for no reason and shut it down. You need to feel that pull of distraction and choose movement instead. That's how you shift things. The key isn't making loud promises, it's making quiet decisions and keeping them. It's saying something simple and proving it with action right away. That's where the strength is, not in shouting your goals, not in explaining your plans, but in the silence after you speak, where your next move determines everything. There's something powerful about a person whose actions always match their words. You notice them, you respect them, because they don't just talk, they deliver. And deep down, you want to be that kind of person. You don't want to just talk about what you'll do. You want to become the kind of person who gets it done. And the only way to build that identity is through repeated action, fast, focused, and without delay. You already know what needs to be done. The list is already in your mind. You've already said it. The only thing left is the decision to stop stalling and start, right here, right now. And when the thought comes, because it will, that says you can do it later, that's the moment you act. That's the test. Not when it's convenient, but when your mind gives you an exit. That's the moment you double down. You say, no, I said I would and I will. This is how you take your life back. Not by hoping things change, not by getting lucky, but by honoring your own word over and over again. You become reliable. You become sharp. You become someone you can count on. That's what gives you peace. That's what builds inner strength, knowing that when you say something, it gets done. You want to build discipline. Do what you said you would right now. You want to increase your focus, cut the gap between decision and action. You want to lead your life instead of reacting to it. Speak less and act more, because the world doesn't need more talkers. It needs more finishers. More people who say, this is what I'm doing, and then follow it up with action immediately. Make that your new standard. If it comes out of your mouth, it shows up in your behavior, and if you're not ready to act on it, don't say it. Protect your word, keep it sharp, keep it strong, because that's the root of every real transformation, your ability to say it and do it without delay. That's how you change, that's how you grow, that's how you build a life that matches the person you want to become. Chapter 7. Make it hard to quit and easy to start. Most people fail not because they aren't capable, but because they quit too easily. They start with a little energy, a little excitement, maybe even a plan, but then they hit a wall. It gets boring, it gets difficult, it gets uncomfortable, and they stop. Not because it was impossible, but because it was too easy to walk away. That's the real issue. Quitting is too convenient. When something is hard to start but easy to abandon, it doesn't last. If you want real progress, you have to flip that. You have to make it easy to begin and hard to walk away. That's how discipline becomes your default. That's how habits stick. That's how progress continues, even when you don't feel like it. To do that, you have to think ahead. You have to design your environment, your choices, and your daily routine in a way that makes quitting uncomfortable. You don't want to leave space for excuses. You don't want to create room for negotiation. When you make quitting harder than continuing, something changes in your mind. You stop thinking about escape and you start thinking about results. That shift in mindset can keep you going even when the motivation is gone. You're not relying on how you feel anymore. You've built a system that supports your action. At the same time, you need to make starting frictionless. The smaller the barrier between you and your task, the more likely you are to do it. Don't wait until conditions are perfect. Don't rely on feeling inspired. Build a process that lets you start with little effort. That means laying out your tools the night before. That means setting a clear time and place for your work. That means removing distractions before they get in your way. It's not about willpower. It's about reducing resistance. The less thinking it takes to begin, the more consistently you'll move. If you want to stop quitting, you need consequences, not punishment, but real outcomes. If you say you'll do something and you don't, there should be something that reminds you of the cost. That might be a commitment to another person. It might be a financial investment. It might be a public deadline. Whatever it is, create weight behind your decisions. When your goals have no cost, they have no urgency, and goals without urgency are easy to abandon. Think about the last time you started something and didn't finish. What would have made it harder to quit? Maybe you didn't tell anyone, so nobody noticed when you stopped. Maybe you didn't set a deadline, so there was no pressure to keep going. Maybe you had no system in place, so every time you tried, it felt like starting from zero. These are not personality flaws, they're process flaws. Fix the process, and the outcome changes. You also need to make progress visible. When you can see how far you've come, it's harder to throw it away. Track your actions. Keep a record. Even a small note saying, "I showed up today," adds weight. It reminds you that you've invested time and effort, and quitting now means wasting that. Progress doesn't always show in big wins. Most of the time, it shows up in small, steady actions that you keep doing, even when no one's watching. And when you stack those actions, quitting starts to feel like losing more than continuing does. Make the path forward simple. Don't try to do everything at once. Pick one thing, one clear action, one target. When your mind is cluttered with too many goals, it gets overwhelmed, and overwhelm often leads to inaction. You don't need 1,000 steps. You need one step you can take right now, and once that step is done, take the next. This keeps the momentum alive. It keeps the engine running, and the longer you stay in motion, the less tempting it becomes to stop. It's also important to remove triggers that pull you toward quitting. Look at your environment. Look at your habits. Look at your daily choices. What makes it easier for you to back out? What distractions make you forget your priorities? Cut them out. Replace them with anchors that keep you grounded. That might mean changing your routine. That might mean distancing yourself from people who encourage your laziness. That might mean deleting things that waste your time. You don't owe your time to things that pull you away from your goals. You owe it to the life you say you want. And when the urge to quit shows up, and it will, slow down and ask yourself, what would my future self want me to do right now? Would they want you to quit because it's uncomfortable? Would they want you to stop because it's not exciting anymore? Or would they want you to hold the line, push through the resistance, and stay committed? That question alone can give you the strength to keep going, because most of the time, quitting isn't a result of weakness. It's a result of choosing short-term comfort over long-term gain. And when you bring your future into the moment, it becomes easier to make the right call. You have to raise the cost of quitting until it feels like failure. You have to raise the reward of continuing until it feels like victory. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. You set up the game, so quitting feels unnatural. So the easiest choice becomes the one that keeps you on track. When you do that, you're no longer depending on inspiration or willpower. You're depending on structure, and structure is sustainable. Start building this today. Make it easier to start by preparing ahead. Remove the decision-making process from your routine. Set a fixed time, set a clear task, keep it simple, then make quitting difficult. add consequences, add reminders, add accountability. If you said you'd do it, let there be no way out except doing it. That kind of commitment sharpens your focus, it eliminates the temptation to delay, and it turns effort into habit. You're not always going to feel strong, you're not always going to feel driven, but that's not the point. The point is to keep going anyway, to make the system stronger than your mood, to design a life that moves forward, even on the tough days, because that's when it really counts, not when it's easy, but when it would be easier to stop. That's the moment where your identity is shaped. You don't need to force perfection, you just need to remove the friction, reduce the gap between intention and action, add weight to your promises, remove options to quit, and stay in motion. That's how you become the kind of person who finishes what they start. That's how you create a life that reflects your highest standard, not one built on emotion, but one built on systems that make the right path the easiest one to follow. That's how you make progress real. That's how you stop starting over. That's how you move forward for good.
Chapter 8. Take one step when your brain says do nothing. There are moments when your mind feels like it's working against you. You wake up and there's no drive, no energy, no excitement. Your thoughts are heavy, your body feels slow, and everything inside you says to just do nothing, to delay, to rest, to avoid. And that's the moment that matters most. That's the moment where everything starts to shift. If you decide to take one step, not 10, not the whole plan, just one honest step forward, while everything in you is telling you to stay still. This isn't about doing something big. It's not about being your best or performing at full speed. It's about doing anything that keeps the door open, because that one small move holds more power than people realize. When your brain is telling you to freeze and you move anyway, you're rewiring something deep inside. You're teaching yourself that you are not a slave to your feelings. You're reminding yourself that discomfort doesn't get the final word. That one small act, getting out of bed, putting on your shoes, opening your laptop, saying no to the excuse, that's how momentum begins. The biggest mistake people make is believing that if they can't give 100%, it's not worth doing anything. So they stay stuck. They wait for energy to return. They wait for clarity. They wait until they feel better. But sometimes the waiting never ends. Sometimes that low state stretches for days or weeks. And if you keep giving in to that urge to do nothing, your confidence begins to fall apart. You start identifying with your weakest moments, and you forget what it feels like to push yourself. But if you can interrupt that cycle, if you can stand up and say, I'm doing one thing today no matter what, you take your power back. Maybe it's 5 minutes of effort. Maybe it's a single phone call. Maybe it's walking outside for a breath of fresh air. But the power is in the act of doing something when your mind offers you every reason not to. That's where growth begins, not when you feel strong, but when you move while feeling stuck. The human brain loves patterns. If you give in once, it becomes easier to give in again. If you ignore your responsibilities today, tomorrow will come with even more resistance. But the same is true for movement. Take action today, and tomorrow gets lighter. The act of moving creates energy. You don't wait for energy, you create it through motion. Your body is built to respond to movement. Your mind becomes sharper the moment you do something that aligns with your values. That's why one small step can change the course of your entire day. This isn't about motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It shows up when it wants, and it disappears when you need it most. What you need is a standard, a rule you live by, something that says no matter how I feel, I don't let a day go by without doing something that pushes me forward. That kind of mindset changes how you show up. You stop depending on emotion. You stop waiting for the perfect window. You act anyway. It's easy to underestimate a small step, but the truth is, that's how everything is built. Every major goal starts with someone deciding to act in a moment that didn't feel ideal. It's in those little moments where you choose to respond with action instead of silence that you build something strong. And over time, those small efforts compound. They become habits. They turn into identity. You go from someone who hesitates to someone who moves. You go from stuck to steady. When you feel low, your brain plays tricks on you. It tells you nothing matters, that it's okay to take a break, that you'll do it tomorrow, that it's too much right now, that you need to rest more before you can work. And if you're not careful, you'll start believing it. But deep down, you know what happens when you keep giving in. You lose rhythm, you lose self-trust, you lose time. So the rule is simple. When your brain says stop, you take one step. Not because it feels good, but because it keeps the door open. One step keeps the pattern alive. One step tells your body, it's time to wake up.
One step creates a thread of movement that you can pull on when the day feels heavy. That one act done consistently is what separates people who break through from those who break down. Some days, that one step is all you'll manage. That's okay. Some days, that single act is enough to carry you to the next one. What matters is that you didn't let the day take you. You didn't let your mind win. You didn't surrender to the thought that said do nothing. You made a decision, and that decision makes all the difference. Over time, those decisions begin to add up. You start seeing progress again. You start feeling different, not because everything got easier, but because you got stronger. You realize that strength isn't always loud or impressive. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's private. Sometimes it's just a person doing one thing they didn't want to do because they made a promise to themselves. Every time you take action in a moment of resistance, you rewrite the story you tell yourself. You stop saying I'm lazy. You stop saying I can't do it. You start saying I move even when it's hard. And that story changes how you behave in the future. It makes you show up faster. It makes you less afraid of discomfort. It makes you believe that your life is in your hands, not your moods. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are what you do. You are the decisions you make when no one is watching. And in those quiet battles, those internal fights where every part of you says do nothing, you can win by doing something, even if it's small. Especially if it's small. This isn't about being perfect, it's about staying in the game, about keeping your head above water when the current tries to drag you under, about doing enough to stay connected to your vision, even when it feels far away. You're not building a masterpiece in one day. You're building a mindset, one that says, I don't freeze, I move. There's power in that kind of discipline. There's power in refusing to sit still when your mind wants to shut down, because in that moment, you're leading yourself. You're not following emotion, you're choosing direction, and when you do that, you stop being stuck. You become someone who makes progress no matter how hard it gets. So the next time your brain says not today, don't argue, don't explain, don't debate, just take one step. That's it. Stand up, open the book, turn off the noise, do the task, make the call, say no to the easy way out. That one move done over and over again is what separates regret from progress. And the more you do it, the easier it gets to move in the right direction, not because life changes, but because you do, one step at a time, always forward. Chapter 9. Create a routine so action becomes automatic daily. Success doesn't come from what you do once in a while. It comes from what you do every day without having to think about it. That's the power of a routine. When you build a system that repeats itself, action stops being a debate. It becomes automatic. You don't waste time deciding. You don't spend energy negotiating. You wake up and do it because it's built into your life. That kind of consistency removes guesswork. It removes emotional resistance, and it gives your goals structure. Without a routine, your day controls you. You react to everything. You're pulled by distractions. You start strong and then fade by the afternoon. And at the end of the day, you feel like you were busy, but nothing important moved forward. That's what happens when there's no plan. Action becomes inconsistent. Focus gets scattered. Your goals start slipping further away, not because you're not trying, but because you don't have a process that carries the weight for you. A solid routine is more than just habits. It's the architecture of discipline. It's how you build rhythm into your day. When your actions happen at the same time in the same way, over and over, they stop relying on motivation. You don't ask yourself, do I feel like it? You just do it, because that's what you do at that hour, in that place, every single time. This doesn't mean your routine has to be perfect or packed with tasks. It just needs to be intentional. You need to decide what matters most, and give those things a fixed place in your day, not just on your best days, on every day. Especially the hard ones. The beauty of a routine is that it shows up when your energy doesn't. You might feel tired, you might feel unmotivated, but the routine is there waiting. You just have to follow it. That's how high performers operate. They don't rely on good moods, they rely on systems. Their day is designed to support the actions that move their life forward. They don't leave things to chance. They schedule their priorities. They lock in time for focus. They protect their routine because they know it's the foundation of everything they build. When you build your own routine, start simple. Don't overcomplicate it. You don't need 20 steps. You just need a few non-negotiables, actions that happen no matter what. Maybe it's waking up at the same time. Maybe it's journaling for 10 minutes. Maybe it's getting in some movement, reviewing your goals, setting your top 3 tasks. These actions don't have to be flashy. They just have to happen every day. What matters is the repetition. When the same action happens in the same order, your brain starts to link it together. It begins to expect it. It gets easier to do it because you've created a trigger. One step leads to the next without effort. That's how you build momentum. That's how you reduce mental friction. You take all the resistance that normally comes with starting and you eliminate it by making the routine your default. You can't depend on memory. You can't rely on willpower. You need structure. You need a set of actions that remove thinking from the equation. That's how professionals operate. They don't wait to feel like showing up. They don't spend half the day figuring out what to do. They've already decided, and because of that, they move faster, stay more focused, and deliver more results. A routine also gives you peace of mind. When you know what you're doing, and when your mind doesn't stay anxious about unfinished tasks, you're not scrambling to catch up. You're not constantly reacting. You're in control. You're ahead of the curve. And that gives you more time and space to think, to create, to grow. The mistake most people make is thinking routines are restrictive. They think having a fixed structure limits their freedom. But the truth is, routine creates freedom. It frees you from chaos. It frees you from wasted time. It frees you from always wondering what to do next. And when you no longer waste energy on deciding, you can use that energy to perform at a higher level. Another benefit of routine is identity. Every action you repeat daily reinforces who you are. When you stick to your routine, you become someone who follows through, someone who doesn't skip steps, someone who takes their goals seriously. You stop being a person who hopes things will change, and you become the person who shows up and makes change happen. That identity shift is powerful, and it starts with your routine. You can also adjust your routine over time. It's not locked in forever. As your goals change, your structure can evolve. But the point is that you have one. You've created a default pattern that keeps your life moving. That stability gives you a foundation. And when life gets unpredictable, when things go wrong, your routine is the anchor that keeps you steady. There will be days when you don't want to do anything, days when your energy is low, your mood is off, and everything feels harder. That's when routine matters most. Because when motivation disappears, your system takes over. You follow the steps, you keep the pattern alive, and by the time you've finished, you feel better, not because something magical happened, but because you didn't break your flow. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. It's about showing up at the same time, in the same way, and doing the thing you said you would. That's how progress becomes predictable. That's how success becomes sustainable. Not from massive bursts of effort, but from steady actions that happen day after day. And if you ever feel like quitting, go back to the routine. Don't chase a feeling. Don't wait for clarity. Just follow the pattern. Take the next step in your process. Because most of the time, the problem isn't the work. The problem is the absence of rhythm. When your life has rhythm, even hard things become manageable. You don't need a complicated system. You need a simple, repeatable routine. One that removes excuses, one that supports your energy, one that keeps you grounded, even when the world gets noisy. Build that, and you'll be able to produce results without constantly pushing yourself. You'll be able to stay focused without needing constant reminders. You'll become someone who does what needs to be done, automatically, every day, and that's where real freedom lives, not in random effort, but in reliable action. Not in waiting for the right time, but in creating a time that works every single day. That's the power of a routine. That's how you make action your new normal. Chapter 10. Force yourself to show up when you least want. The real test of character isn't how you perform on your best day. It's how you show up when every part of you wants to disappear. When your energy is gone. When your mind is full of doubt. When your heart feels heavy and your motivation is nowhere to be found. That's the moment that decides everything. That's when discipline steps in, or everything falls apart. Because anyone can work when they're feeling good. But not everyone can force themselves to keep showing up when it's the last thing they want to do. And that's where winners are made. Not in comfort, but in the uncomfortable moments when it would be so easy to walk away, and no one would even notice if you did. That voice in your head will always offer you a way out. It'll sound reasonable. It'll tell you that you need rest, that it's not the right time, that maybe today isn't the day to push. It'll suggest that no one's watching anyway, so why does it matter? But deep down you know it matters. You know skipping that day, avoiding that effort, breaking that commitment, it chips away at you. Not in a dramatic way, but in a subtle, dangerous way that builds over time. It builds doubt, it builds regret, and eventually it builds a pattern you never intended to create. But when you force yourself to show up, especially when it's the hardest, you're doing something powerful. You're sending a message to yourself that says, my word matters more than my mood. That kind of strength isn't loud, it's not flashy, but it builds something solid inside you. It builds a kind of pride that doesn't depend on applause or approval. It comes from knowing you didn't quit when it would have been easy. It comes from knowing you've got your own back. You can't wait for the perfect moment. That moment doesn't exist. If you only act when conditions are right, you'll live a life controlled by circumstances. And life doesn't get easier just because you're tired. It keeps moving. The bills don't stop. The responsibilities don't pause. The time doesn't slow down. So your choice is simple. You either show up or you fall behind. And the more you delay, the heavier it gets. One missed day turns into two. Two turns into a week. And then you're looking back wondering how you let it slip. The solution is simple but not easy. You get up anyway. You go anyway. You keep the promise even when you don't feel like it. That's what separates people who succeed from people who keep restarting. They've built the habit of showing up, no matter what. They don't need to feel amazing to do the work. They don't wait for motivation to kick in. They've trained their body to move and their mind to follow. That's the discipline you want, the kind that's built through repetition, through action, through pushing when you least want to. And the truth is, those low-energy days matter more than the good ones, because they're the real builders. They force you to rely on your will instead of your mood. They shape your resilience. They strengthen your mental muscle. You don't become strong by doing easy things. You become strong by doing the hard things on the hard days. That's where the fire is. That's where the breakthroughs happen, not when everything feels right, but when you take action despite everything feeling wrong. There's always going to be resistance. That's part of life, but the more you train yourself to move through it, the quieter it becomes. You stop giving it power. You stop letting your feelings run your life. You start acting from commitment, from discipline, from a decision you already made. And when that becomes your standard, everything changes. You don't fall off track anymore because there is no other option. You don't have to fight with yourself. You just move. That's the difference between those who grow and those who plateau. Force doesn't mean anger. It means decision. It means you don't leave the door open for escape. You don't sit around hoping you'll feel ready. You show up with whatever you've got, even if it's not much, because effort on your worst day still moves you forward. And more importantly, it keeps your identity intact. You're telling yourself, I am the kind of person who doesn't disappear when things get hard. That belief gives you power. That belief pushes you when the emotion fades. That belief becomes your new standard. You will never regret showing up. You might be tired. You might be dragging. You might not perform at your highest level, but you'll finish that day knowing you didn't back down. You'll sleep better. You'll walk taller. You'll remember that you've got the grit to move even when your body says stop. And over time, that habit creates a new level of strength, a strength that doesn't rely on good conditions, a strength that travels with you everywhere you go. People talk a lot about motivation, but this is something deeper. This is about integrity. This is about following through on what you said, not because you feel like it, but because you gave your word. Your word matters. Your commitment matters. And when you start living like that, when you start pushing through because it's who you are, you stop needing inspiration. You become your own driver. You create your own momentum. You get out of your head and into motion. There are going to be plenty of days when your energy is low, your mind is scattered, and everything in you wants to shut down. Those are not days to back off. Those are days to lean in, to remind yourself why you started, to recommit when it's difficult. To prove to yourself that you don't need perfect conditions to be consistent. That's what strong people do. They show up tired. They show up uncertain. They show up late. But they show up. And when you keep doing that, something shifts inside you. You stop fearing difficulty. You stop avoiding discomfort. You start understanding that showing up is the win. Everything else is extra. Just showing up means you're already ahead of the old version of you, the one who would have stayed in bed, scrolled on their phone, waited for another day. That version fades every time you force yourself to act. Every time you refuse to surrender to the excuse, you become more of who you're meant to be. Don't chase perfect. Chase consistency. Don't seek comfort. Seek responsibility. Hold yourself to the standard of action, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because that's where greatness is built, in the quiet, uncomfortable moments, where you feel like giving up but don't, where you want to quit but choose to continue. That decision defines you. That decision shapes your future. You don't need to be in the mood. You don't need to be confident. You just need to move, even if it's slow, even if it's messy, even if it's far from your best, because showing up when you least want to isn't weakness, it's strength. And every time you do it, you get closer to the life you're trying to build, not by talking about it, but by living it. Not someday, today, now, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable. That's what separates talkers from doers. That's what separates average from excellent. And that's what makes the difference in the end.